Welcome to Deep Dive Lab, where we break down and dissect cutting-edge scientific research, from advanced biomedical technologies to breakthroughs in AI, materials science, chemistry, and physics, all told as compelling, easy-to-follow stories. And today we're jumping into something that kind of flips our everyday understanding of the physical world completely on its head.
Oh, absolutely. It's a wild ride.
Right. I mean, when you hear the word chemistry, you probably picture like very specific things.
Yeah, probably high school lab class.
Yeah.
Oversized safety goggles, the classic baking soda and vinegar volcano bubbling over a plastic cup.
Exactly, yeah. And that giant, colorful periodic table of elements hanging on the wall, it just looks so neat, right? Everything is perfectly categorized into little boxes.
Right. It gives you this overwhelming sense that chemistry is a finished science.
Hmm.
Like you mix chemical A with chemical B, you get chemical C, and the people in the white coats just have it all figured out.
Yeah, it creates an illusion of total mastery.
Yeah.
We assume we have the ultimate instruction manual for the universe.
Yeah.
Like we have quantum mechanics, which beautifully explains the microscopic world of atoms and electrons.
Right, and on the other end, we have classical thermodynamics, which governs the macroscopic world, how engines work, how heat transfers, how systems reach equilibrium.
But if we have this complete manual, I mean, it begs some massive, borderline embarrassing questions.
It really does.
Like, if chemistry is so perfectly understood, why can't we build a battery that just lasts forever? Why can't we perfectly recreate the way a simple everyday leaf turns sunlight into fuel?
Yeah, why are we still struggling with that?
Exactly. And here is the strangest, most sci-fi question of all, I think. How did non-living basic chemicals suddenly decide to wake up and become alive?
Right, and those are the exact questions keeping the top chemists in the world awake at night. Because when you actually start probing the edges of modern research, you realize our instruction manual is, well, it's missing its most important pages.
The pages are just torn right out.
Basically, yeah. The neat little formulas we learn in school start to break down when you apply them to complex reality. There are these glaring black holes in our understanding of how matter actually behaves in the real, messy world.
So how are scientists actually trying to map out what we don't know? Because that feels like a huge undertaking.
Oh, it is. They're basically conducting massive audits of the entire field.
Wow.
What we're looking at in this deep dive is an exhaustive literature survey that synthesized reports from major scientific institutions.
Like who? Like universities or?
More like heavyweights. The U.S. Department of Energy's Basic Energy Sciences Program, and IUPAC, which is the Global Authority on Chemical Standards.
Okay, so the big guns.
Exactly. They analyzed decades of consensus, and more importantly, decades of disagreements, to identify the top 3 grand challenges facing modern chemistry.
Wow, okay, so it's like the ultimate to-do list for humanity.
That's a great way to put it. And the first major hurdle on that list is achieving predictive control of matter and reactions.
Predictive control. So meaning what exactly?
Meaning understanding and controlling materials right down to the fundamental electron level, which, right now, we currently cannot do perfectly. We are largely stuck using mathematical approximations.
Wait, really? But we have supercomputers the size of tennis courts mapping this stuff out. Why do we need approximations?
Because of something called the quantum many-body problem.
Okay, sounds intimidating.
It kind of is. Think about what a molecule actually is. It's a collection of nuclei and electrons. And electrons have a negative charge, so they constantly repel each other.
Right, like magnets pushing apart.
Exactly. But in the quantum realm, they aren't just tiny billiard balls bouncing around. They act as both particles and waves simultaneously. They exist in these, clouds of probability.
Just smeared out everywhere?
Yeah. So if you have a molecule with just 100 electrons, calculating how every single one of those smeared out wave particles interacts with the other 99 in real time is a mathematical nightmare. The complexity just scales exponentially.
So even our best supercomputers just melt trying to do the math.
Pretty much. The universe doesn't have enough computing power to solve those equations brute force. So scientists have to use a workaround.
Okay, what's the workaround?
They use a framework called density functional theory, or DFT.
DFT?
Yeah, so instead of trying to track every individual electron's chaotic behavior, DFT looks at the overall cloud of electrons. the electron density, and uses that to figure out the ground state energy of the system.
Ground state energy being like the lowest, most relaxed baseline energy state of a molecule.
Right, precisely. And if you know the ground state energy, you can predict a lot about how that molecule will behave. DFT is supposed to be this formally exact mapping.
Seems to be, I hear a but coming.
Oh, there's a huge catch. To make DFT work flawlessly, you need something called the exact functional. It's the mathematical equation that ties the whole framework together and perfectly translates that electron cloud into an exact energy value.
Okay.
And, well, we simply don't know what it is.
Wait, so it's like having a master recipe for the world's most incredible cake, but the ink is completely smudged on the most important secret ingredient. Like, we know the ingredient has to exist for the cake to bake correctly. We just can't read what it is.
That is exactly it, yes. Because of that smudge, practical DFT calculations force scientists to make painful trade-offs. You basically have to choose your approximation.
Like picking your poison.
Exactly. Do you want high accuracy? Do you want it to apply broadly to different types of molecules? Or do you want it to actually finish calculating before the end of the century? You can rarely have all three.
Wow, which means we can't just design a new material perfectly from scratch on a computer and know exactly how it will perform.
No, we have to guess. It forces the field to rely heavily on expensive, tedious trial and error in the laboratory. We're empirically screening catalysts by making thousands of variations and testing them one by one.
Instead of just coding the perfect molecule and hitting print.
Right. And the research survey points out that the math bottleneck doesn't just stop at the microscopic quantum level either.
Oh, great. So the macroscopic world is just as frustrating.
Oh yeah, the sources dive into far from equilibrium chemistry, which really highlights how chaotic our environment actually is. Classical thermodynamics is fantastic if a system is at equilibrium.
Meaning everything is calm, balanced, and closed off in a controlled box.
Yes. But real life isn't closed off. Combustion in a car engine, biological metabolism in your cells, the weather patterns, atmospheric chemistry, these are driven, dissipative systems. They're constantly being fed energy and losing energy. They are perpetually far from equilibrium.
Right, they're messy. And to understand those messy, real-world chemical reactions, you have to understand fluid dynamics, right? How liquids and gases flow and mix and react while in motion. And I found it absolutely staggering to read that we don't even fully understand the math of flowing water.
It is wild, isn't it? We rely on the Navier-Stokes equations to govern basic viscous fluid flow, meaning how a thick or thin fluid moves under pressure and friction.
Okay.
But solving these equations fundamentally is actually one of the unsolved Millennium Prize problems in mathematics.
Wait, so we don't have a mathematically rigorous understanding of turbulence?
We really don't. We can't definitively prove that the equations won't suddenly blow up and produce impossible infinities when the flow gets chaotic.
That is just, it's a humbling reality check, honestly. We're trying to predict how a volatile chemical will behave in a giant swirling industrial reactor, but mathematically, we can't even perfectly model the swirling of milk into a cup of morning coffee.
Exactly. Without consistent laws for non-equilibrium systems and complex turbulent flows, our fundamental comprehension of mixing and heat transfer is severely limited.
And this inability to predict turbulence or map electron behavior perfectly isn't just, an abstract math headache for some guy at a chalkboard. It directly bottlenecks our ability to build the technology we need to survive.
It really does. Which transitions us perfectly into the second massive domain identified in the literature.
Right. Sustainable energy, climate, and circular resources.
Yes. The stakes here are quite literally existential. The global transition away from fossil fuels requires a mastery over materials and reaction control that we simply do not possess yet.
Right, because we're still guessing.
Exactly. The reports specifically highlight the quest for room temperature superconductivity and lithium-air batteries.
A room temperature superconductor would completely revolutionize the global power grid. I mean, right now, we lose massive amounts of electricity just pushing it through copper wires, right? It just turns into heat.
Yeah, it's incredibly inefficient. A superconductor would allow electricity to flow with zero resistance, zero loss. And lithium-air batteries would give us energy density storage comparable to gasoline, but completely electric.
Which would change everything. But developing those technologies requires that exact functional of matter we are missing. We're just blindly feeling around in the dark for the right combination of elements.
Exactly. And this lack of mastery really shows when we look at solar energy, because the holy grail of climate technology is artificial photosynthesis.
Wait, I have to push back here for a second. Trees, algae, Tiny little weeds cracking through the sidewalk. They've been doing photosynthesis for billions of years without a PhD. They literally just sit in the sun and do it.
Hmm.
Why is it so profoundly difficult for us to just copy a weed?
I know it looks so effortless on the surface, but biochemically, a leaf is one of the most highly advanced microscopic nanoreactors in the universe.
Really? A leaf?
Oh, yeah. To copy it artificially, say, to split water into hydrogen and oxygen fuels using just sunlight, you have to seamlessly integrate three incredibly difficult steps.
Okay, what are they?
First, you need light absorption to capture the solar energy. Second, you need charge separation. You have to move those excited, high-energy electrons where they need to go before they snap back to their original state and waste the energy as heat.
Oh, so you have to catch the lightning in a bottle before it grounds out.
Exactly. And third, you need multi-electron catalysis to actually drive the chemical reaction. Splitting water requires transferring multiple electrons at the exact same time. It's a molecular juggling act where dropping a single ball breaks the entire machine.
And the sources point out that artificial systems tend to degrade really rapidly. Like, why does an artificial leaf break down when a real one doesn't?
Because splitting water is a highly violent process at the molecular level. It creates these incredibly harsh, highly reactive intermediates, things like reactive oxygen species.
Which are what exactly?
They are essentially molecular buzzsaws. In an artificial system, those buzzsaws start attacking the very catalyst that created them. They just chew up the artificial leaf from the inside out.
Oh, wow. So how do biological leaves survive that?
Because they're constantly repairing and rebuilding their own machinery in real time, our artificial systems are static. Once they crack, they are dead.
So we're trying to build a solar panel that digests sunlight, sorts the volatile energy, survives a barrage of molecular buzzsaws, and theoretically needs to rebuild its own glass when it cracks.
That's the challenge, yes.
Okay, it makes perfect sense why this is a grand challenge now. But we need to figure it out, especially when it comes to pulling the carbon we've already emitted out of the atmosphere.
Absolutely. The IUPAC lists direct air capture, or DAC, and electrochemical carbon capture as finalist emerging technologies. These are vital for mitigating the worst effects of climate change. But again, we hit a massive chemistry bottleneck.
Because the challenge isn't just trapping carbon dioxide from the air. Like, we've known how to trap CO2 for a long time. The real challenge is doing it economically and at a planetary scale, right?
Right. You need materials called sorbents or electrolytes. They're essentially chemical sponges designed to grab specific molecules. But you need fast kinetics, meaning the sponge has to soak up the CO2 incredibly quickly.
Okay.
And crucially, it needs to have a low energy input to release the CO2 later. If it takes a coal plant's worth of energy to heat up your carbon capture machine just so you can squeeze the CO2 back out of the sponge for storage, well, you are defeating the entire purpose of the technology.
So the sponge has to be incredibly sticky when it touches air, but instantly let go of the carbon the second you ask it to, without degrading over thousands of cycles.
Yes, it requires an unprecedented level of chemical precision.
But let's take a step back and connect these dots for a second. We've been talking about the struggle to perfectly organize matter at the electron level. We've talked about trying to master energy transfer to save our climate. What happens when matter actually manages to perfectly organize itself, constantly pulling in energy to maintain a far from equilibrium state?
Well, then you get the ultimate complex system. You get life.
Which brings us to the third grand challenge, explaining the chemical origins of life and achieving biomolecular control, abiogenesis. The mystery of how dead rocks, primordial oceans, and atmospheric gases organize themselves into biological organisms.
It is the ultimate mystery. And the literature emphasizes just how vast this gap in our knowledge is. A leading concept is the RNA World hypothesis, which suggests that early life relied heavily on RNA molecules to both store genetic information and act as catalysts to drive reactions long before DNA and complex proteins evolved.
But long before you can even build RNA, you need the basic building blocks, right? You need prebiotic chemistry to somehow spontaneously produce the exact right sugars, lipids, and amino acids.
Exactly. And the sources dive into a famous chemical process called the Formose reaction.
Oh, right, the Formose reaction.
Yeah, under the right conditions, formaldehyde can react with itself to naturally form sugars. On the surface, that sounds like a solved problem. Formaldehyde existed on the early Earth. It reacts, it makes sugars, boom, building blocks achieved.
But I'm guessing it's not actually that simple.
Not at all. The reality of the Formose reaction is a chaotic mess. It doesn't just make the specific useful sugars biology needs. It makes this complex tar-like mixture of dozens and dozens of different random
So
sugars.
it's basically a primordial sludge.
Yes. The unresolved question is a filtering problem. How were the exact right biologically relevant sugars selected out of that sludge? I mean, there was no scientist in a lab coat using a centrifuge to separate the good molecules from the useless ones.
And that filtering problem leads into a detail that is just profoundly strange to me. The phenomenon of homochirality, or the handedness of life.
Yes, the geometry of biology. It's fascinating. Molecules can have a specific shape that makes them left-handed or right-handed. They're made of the exact same atoms, connected in the same order, but they are mirror images of each other. Just like your actual left and right hands, you can't perfectly superimpose your left hand over your right hand.
Right. And if you mix basic chemicals in a lab today, the laws of probability say you will almost always get a 50-50 mix, right?
All right.
A racemic mixture of both left-handed and right-handed molecules.
Exactly 50-50.
But biology on Earth is incredibly biased. Every living thing strictly uses L-amino acids, which are left-handed, to build proteins. And we strictly use D sugars, which are right-handed, to build our DNA. It's 100% bias. Why wouldn't it just be a 50-50 mix?
It remains one of the greatest unsolved puzzles in organic chemistry. If life started as a random soup of 50-50 molecules, how did it suddenly choose one side and permanently lock out the other?
That's so weird.
The prevailing theory is that some tiny initial random bias, maybe a stochastic fluctuation in the primordial pool or polarized light from a dying star hitting the atmosphere, created just a slightly higher percentage of left-handed amino acids.
Just a tiny microscopic edge, like 51%.
Right, but how does a 51% edge turn into 100% total domination across all life on the planet?
Yeah. How?
Through chemical amplification. We've discovered mechanisms like Viedma ripening that prove this is possible. If you take a mixture of left and right-handed crystals in a liquid and continuously grind them up, an incredible thing happens.
Because the crystals dissolve and recrystallize constantly due to the grinding, right?
Exactly. And because larger crystals are slightly more stable than smaller ones, the slightly more abundant handedness starts to essentially eat the less abundant one. The dominant side forces the dissolving molecules to recrystallize in its own image.
Wow.
Over time, that tiny initial bias amplifies until the entire mixture converts completely to one single-handedness.
That is wild. It's like being in a massive, noisy stadium, right? One person randomly starts clapping, the two people next to them join in, the people behind them stand up, and within seconds, a tiny random fluctuation has hijacked the entire stadium into doing the wave.
That is an excellent visualization. We know amplification mechanisms like that exist, but proving exactly what specific prebiotic environment triggered this stadium wave for all of life on Earth over 4 billion years ago, we are still searching for the smoking gun.
But the grand challenge isn't just looking backward at how life started, is it? Scientists want to exert biomolecular control right now, today.
Right. Moving from passive observation to active engineering. Take protein folding, for example. A protein is just a long string of amino acids. But to do its job in your body, it has to fold up into a highly specific, complex 3D shape.
And for decades, predicting exactly how that string would fold was an impossibly complex math problem, right? Kind of like the exact functional of matter we discussed earlier.
Exactly the same kind of bottleneck. But recently, artificial intelligence entered the chat. We have systems like DeepMind's AlphaFold, which achieves roughly 90% accuracy in predicting these protein structures.
Which is incredible. It feels like we've essentially solved biochemistry.
It is a monumental breakthrough, for sure, but it hasn't solved the whole puzzle. AI is phenomenal at predicting static structures. It gives us an incredibly accurate photograph of the protein.
But biology isn't static.
Right. AI struggles with dynamic, shifting shapes and complex molecular interactions that change in real time depending on their environment.
Oh, I see. It's like taking a high-resolution photograph of an Olympic gymnast mid-flip. You know exactly what they look like in that fraction of a second, but the photograph doesn't teach you the physics of the flip itself or how they land on the mat.
Exactly. And the dynamic physics of the flip is where the magic happens. The sources point to the mystery of better-than-perfect enzymes.
Better than perfect.
Yeah. Enzymes are the biological catalysts that make life happen. They digest your food, they copy your DNA, and some of them operate faster than the theoretical speed of diffusion.
Wait, really? So they are literally pulling molecules together faster than random molecular motion in a liquid should mathematically allow. How is that physical possible?
It's mind-bending. Current models suggest they utilize mechanics like substrate channeling. The enzyme doesn't just wait for the right molecule to blindly bump into it. It creates a localized electrostatic field.
Like a microscopic tractor beam.
Essentially, yes. A tractor beam or a hyper-efficient conveyor belt inside its own structure, physically funneling the target molecules exactly where they need to go.
That is unbelievable. It's engineering on a scale that makes our best industrial factories look like stone tools.
And that is the ultimate goal. We want to achieve de novo design. We want to design enzymes entirely from the ground up, writing the sequence of amino acids ourselves to build molecular machines that can, say, digest plastic waste in the ocean or neutralize toxins in the bloodstream with perfect efficiency.
Okay, let's zoom out and look at the biggest picture here. Because it is incredibly easy to get lost in the weeds of left-handed molecules, turbulent milk and coffee, and quantum math. Why does this literature survey matter for you, the listener, navigating your life right now?
Because these are not just abstract, academic puzzles meant to give graduate students a headache. The reports from the DOE and IUPAC make a profound case.
Hmm.
Solving these three domains, predictive control of matter, creating sustainable climate tech, and engineering biomolecules, will dictate the trajectory of human civilization.
Wow, okay. Big stakes.
Huge stakes. We are talking about the very foundation of global economic productivity, the creation of climate-resilient agriculture and health systems. Fundamentally, discovering the answers to these challenges dictates our survival as a species.
I mean, a massive fraction of all economic gains, increased lifespans, and per capita income growth over the last century traces directly back to advances in chemistry and material science.
Right.
If we want that progress to continue, if we want a circular economy where we aren't just burning finite resources and hoping for the best, we have to clear these bottlenecks.
It completely reframes the entire discipline. Chemistry is no longer just a historical catalog of what elements do when you mix them in a beaker. It is an active, urgent quest to overcome the limits of human knowledge regarding matter, energy, and the mechanics of life itself. We are trying to find the missing pages of the instruction manual so we can finally read it cover to cover.
Which leaves me with one final lingering thought for you to chew on today. We've talked about the missing exact functional for electrons, the chaotic math of fluid dynamics, and the hidden mechanics of better-than-perfect biological enzymes.
Yeah.
If scientists actually pull this off, if they eventually crack the quantum math, figure out the exact mechanisms of biological chirality, and can design custom molecular machines completely from scratch, at what point does chemistry stop being just a way to observe and categorize nature and become the literal programming language to write our own reality? What will we choose to build when we finally have the full source code?
It's a profound question.
Something to think about the next time you see a baking soda volcano. Thank you so much for joining us in Deep Dive Lab. If you want to keep exploring the edges of human knowledge with us, be sure to follow and subscribe for more science stories. Until next time.